Okay, we'll get started in just one more minute. Okay, so it is 12 o'clock. I want to be respectful of time, so we'll go ahead and at least get started. Welcome to Recruiting on a Budget. My name is Renee Wethington, and I am the founder of HR Made Simple, a consulting firm that specializes in human resources as well as executive coaching. So I have my team on the line with me, actually double Monica's on the line. And we'll do some introductions. Miss Monica, if you could just go back to the very first slide where we kind of talk about just setting the intention for the day. There's a couple more, Miss Monica. I think there's one more slide that says setting intentions as the slide number 2. Okay. Yep. Setting intentions. Okay. All right. So, Monica and I, we were talking about what we experience with our clients. And we were talking about as we have webinars to put more information out there proactively, what are some topics that we can talk about? And recruiting came to mind, both because of what we're seeing in the marketplace, but also just sometimes there's a little bit of, I think, lack of direction on what business owners have. And so we wanted to make sure that, one, we leverage our expertise with this audience, but then also just give some proactive guidance so that as you're able to start 2026 with a lot of excitement, I'm sure you have that, we can give you some of the insights as well that potentially could be helpful. So we know that as business owners, there's a lot of emphasis on growth for the organization, also having a great team, and sometimes you don't have the HR support. But we wanted to just highlight you can do recruiting, of course, on a budget, but have the impact that you want. And so really that's having the right structure in place. And then also the questions that you're asking those candidates, very, very critical. So we'll go to the next slide where we've highlighted just some interesting quotes. When you think about hiring people, the first one just really talks about, like I mentioned before, it takes time. You do need to be intentional. There's an opportunity to ask the right questions. Don't focus on just likability, right? Or where people are very similar to yourself. And then also curiosity, right? Longer term, what are their goals? What are their aspirations? And does it fit in alignment with your organization? All right, the second one I thought was interesting. You really want to focus on development. So not just building a business yourself, but putting the right team in place so you're able to leverage them to build the business for you. And then lastly, we have the comment from Oprah. So lots of people want to ride with you in a limo, but what you want is someone who will take the bus when the limo breaks down. So people that are not in it for just what's good for them, but they're really invested in the organization, the mission, or even you as a leader. All right, we'll move forward to the next slide. So a little bit more about me. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I am originally from Chicago, and I've spent the last 28 years in corporate environments with PepsiCo, working for also M&M Mars, and that led me to my career at Banfield as well. And then I got into coaching. So, and that's how I met Monica. You'll meet in a second. Was through the IPEC coaching program. But I love HR. I love just business growth. And so this building this organization, having a team of business partners that are all directors, it's really a perfect opportunity for me to do like the best of both worlds, coaching as well as HR strategy. Oh, on the screen too, I guess I better mention my little guy. He's on there. So he was a quite a bit younger and sweeter at that age. But yes, that's I have one son, and glad to be here, glad to share some of these insights with you, and would love for you to meet the rest of the team. So I'll turn it over to Monica.
Hey guys, nice to meet you. This is Monica Gidwani. I had the significant opportunity to meet Renee through IPEC, as she mentioned, and we made a great connection over HR and talent acquisition. So, a little bit about myself. I have over 21 years of experience doing recruiting across the life sciences, so whether it be biotech, pharmaceutical, and supported some other areas of HR, and now have recently decided to add to my tool belt, as you say, with some coaching. Companies I've supported, Merck, Flagship Pioneering, Celerity. I think the smallest company I've really supported was Celerity on its growth and uptick. So I think we collectively understand that small business mindset and especially the growth mindset. When I'm not connecting with people, whether it be recruiting or on a personal basis, I really enjoy reading. I'm an avid Bollywood dancer and really helps de-stress me. So it's a great kind of hobby to have on the side. I am going to kick it off now with getting into a little bit about recruiting on a budget. I will say, whether you're recruiting for a small company or a big company, the budget is always super critical. And so we've learned how to be scrappy and make some really sort of high growth, high potential wins with not having a ton to work with. And significantly, the startup term that you will always hear is building the plane while you're flying it. So we completely understand your mindset, and we're here to, help you kind of navigate what does recruiting on a budget mean for you? Can you compete for talent as a small business? What does the cost of a hire look like versus the cost of a bad hire? Which exponentially, dollar amount is significantly more than we can ever tell you. And then, we'll go into a little bit about building an internal recruiting process for you and when does fractional support make sense? And then we'll leave some time for some questions for everyone. Renee did pop a question into the chat. It would be really helpful for us to learn where you guys are all dialing in from. And, if there's anything specific or, something you're looking for, please feel free to, pop it into the chat and we'll try to address it on our call today. So, like I said, the whole purpose of being here is what does recruiting on a budget really mean? So, I think very initially, right, it's being intentional with your time, your money, your effort, your small business. Um, have limited resources. You're thinking about where you want to spend that time, which is revenue driven. And so being intentional with that time and effort is really super important. And then investing where it matters most. Your people are your greatest resource. So it's super important to be focused on that aspect. And then hiring smart and not cutting corners. Asking the right questions, thinking about where you need this person, how is it going to impact your business from a large scale versus just, what can they do in the short term is going to be super important as you think about what recruiting means for you. And then also avoiding tools, ads, and also hires that you might not need yet. So I think the other important aspect of recruiting is also hand in hand with workforce planning and, understanding where your company's looking to be at the end of this year, at the end of 5 years, and how do you recruit for that? or how do you hire for that is the better question. I think some of the, most concerns that I've seen in talking to clients is can we as a small business really compete for talent? The short answer is yes, but just not on salary alone, right? You have strengths as a small business. Sometimes being a smaller team offers more clarity, more transparency, just more communication, and you're much more connected to your employees because you're not a large scale firm. And that also comes along with flexibility and autonomy. So I think, when you have star players stepping into the mix with your team, you are able to give them a little bit more autonomy and take on more work. And also as a growth opportunity for them to kind of step into different roles within a smaller organization. When you think about a large organization, sometimes roles are very niche. So the benefit or the strength that you have as a small operation is really thinking about what growth opportunities you can provide for your folks by inherently just being a part of the team. And I think the other thing that you really are able to offer people is purpose and culture. And the work that folks are doing is so much easier to see the impact of it than maybe, going down a long um, road of not really sure if their work is amounting to something. So offering that purpose, that culture from the organization is super important. And I think the other thing that's really great about being a small business is having that personalized candidate experience. When they're hearing from the CEO of the company for a job offer or even an interview, that just it shows up as a different, um, you know, different sort of experience than when you're going through this long chain of hiring events. So I think there's a lot of strengths to being a small business and competing for talent. So how do you build a simple, effective process? So there's buckets in recruiting, right? You want to think about the prep work that you do before you even start the process. And job descriptions become super important when you're doing that. And it's not just thinking about, how do I write a clear and effective job description, but where can I really get people engaged from a diversity perspective and not just diversity in who we are, but diversity of thought. And I think that is super important how you think about that intentionally. So focus on the outcomes and not the day-to-day tasks. Define success. What does 30, 60, 90 days look like? The prep work that you do up front is going to pay off in dividends in the future. So think about very intentionally what that looks like. Separate the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves and really be honest about the scope. And, think about that when you're hiring, right? The must-haves versus the nice-to-haves kind of play hand in hand with each other. But at some point, as you also start to talk to candidates and interview folks, that'll start to refine itself. But it's great to have that um, initial sort of bucket to work with. I know, Renee, you and I were talking a little bit about this 30, 60, 90-day plan. Do you have anything you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I know it's not popular with hiring managers to really want to spend that type of time really thinking about what the onboarding is going to look like. But I do think it's critical, especially as you define the job description, also saying what's realistic, who's going to show this person those things, and then how will I know that they will be successful? So sometimes backing into that and really thinking about those outcomes. It's not popular. Monica and I were talking about that. It's not what hiring managers want to do, but it's critical because if the hire comes on board and then isn't successful, who does that fall to, right? Whose responsibility is that? And so I think the more upfront work, it's really, really important. Thanks, Monica.
No, not at all. And the next step to kind of jump right into is candidate attraction. So you've got this job description out there, you're thinking about postings, you've got employee referrals that you can look at. So get creative and also double down on the resources that you do have, right? So if you have other employees in your small business, people know people, people want to help other people. And so it's an inherent way to get some folks and if you decide you want to offer up a small employee referral bonus, that $100 gift card, that $500 gift card will go a really long way into getting you some really strong folks in the mix. Um, the other thing is the LinkedIn organic posts. I met somebody recently who's an influencer on LinkedIn, and I never like the thought of influencing on LinkedIn as a true influencer when you think about social media almost seem like a different thought to me, but it's a great place to post, to ask for referrals, to also put your thoughts out there, and the engagement that you're getting now is probably the most I've ever seen across LinkedIn. So just putting those sort of thoughts out there and what you're looking for is tremendous. And also have your network share your posts. That's another big way to get the word out because the larger networks that you can tap through the people you know will also be quite lucrative for you. Um, and then, using your industry and local networks. So based on the different businesses that you all are coming from, I mean, there's got to be some niche industry or local sort of get-togethers, places that you can really leverage to help get more candidates. And again, it'll be a lot of word of mouth, um, but it does significantly pay off. Um, and then really think about like where would you go if you were looking for something, right? I think really thinking about it in that way will help you branch out. And if you haven't looked for something in a while, tap into your network again to see where's the best place to go. Um, the other thing you're going to have to do at some point is really think about direct outreach to passive candidates. So, having like a premium version of LinkedIn, which is not super expensive, you can opt for it for about $40 a month. And if you kind of keep it in your cart for a little while, they'll send you a 50% off coupon and you could do it for like $20 a month. And it gives you in-mails. And so you can reach out to some passive candidates through LinkedIn. But the other important thing that will come into play with that is also, writing some really creative outreach letters to these folks. And that also sets your sort of brand apart. Um, but now let's say you have a slate of, three candidates. That's usually the industry standard, having about three candidates to compare yourself, compare against for you to see if you can get the right hire. And that's just a part of it, right? Sourcing also involves, hey, how many people did we talk to? How many people did we bring that down to? And thinking about what that looks like in terms of your metrics. But moving into the interview phase is also very critical. So really having clear evaluation criteria. So what are
Hey,
you?
hey,
Yeah,
Monica, before you go into that, I was just
yep,
thinking about what you were saying about LinkedIn and how it's changing a little bit. Like,
yep.
I feel like it's becoming more social, but I've also noticed is that when you comment, like you said, on people's posts, then it like builds connections, even though you may not know them,
Okay,
right?
so here's the
So that's been, yeah, that's been just I think a needed change, right? It's making LinkedIn a little bit more personal.
Yeah, I think that, and in addition, like people are being really helpful by just commenting and saying sharing for reach, right? And that also filters through their networks. So it's if you don't know all the nuances of it, like it limits how you can kind of navigate. So, you know, definitely talk to people and figure out what's the best sort of method to kind of leverage that. And of course, you can always rely on us to help you with this as well. Um, Anything else, Renee, you want to add in?
No, I think that was it. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to interviewing, as I was saying, really setting your evaluation criteria. So this goes back to the job description, right? Really thinking about what are your clear must-haves, what are your non-negotiables, and then where do you kind of go from there in terms of nice to haves. And, there have been many instances, especially in the market right now, you're getting a lot of folks that are qualified for your job, so for your openings. And so think about, not only who you're getting that's right for the job, but who's going to complement your team. They may have something that, stands out that another team member doesn't. And so when you're thinking about how to evaluate folks, this becomes a little bit more important as well. And then structured interviews, right? You really, in terms of just legality as well, you want to be consistent with the questions that you ask. You want to make sure that you have the same core questions for candidates, and one candidate is not being asked a different evaluation criteria than others. Um, and also assess for soft skills, which is also super important. So one of the things I really look for as a recruiter is hunger, drive, ambition. You can teach certain skill sets. Not everyone, right? I don't know that I can learn to be a doctor overnight. But if you're looking for a certain skill set that you feel technically you can teach somebody, then hunger, drive, ambition becomes so important and critical when you're evaluating folks because you can't teach those soft skills. Those are just going to be there inherently, and it could really make or break um, who you are as an entity. So, just for a quick example, I support a small law firm in terms of HR as well as their hiring. And we had a recent added individual to the team. He's a little bit more junior in scope, but the hunger and the drive that he brought and the quick learning ability, he's surpassed some of the folks that have been there for over 2 years. And so, these are things that you want to think about as you're interviewing candidates. Um, and then, of course, the decision-making process, which is also super critical, right? I think as you are a small business, you're thinking about speed and hiring, but it's not necessarily the thing you want to activate the most. It's really having clarity in what your team's needs are, how you're going to complement the team, what is going to be the right outlook for this person. Because if they are a stellar candidate, they're going to be asking you about, hey, what's my career path here? What's my journey with the team, with the organization? So really having clarity in what that looks like for your open role for the person that you decide to bring in. And of course, clear expectations of what you're looking for and making sure your interview team knows that. So faster, better decisions. And then also the critical piece to that from a candidate perspective is just giving them a great candidate experience. I've had, interviews with companies. I think I'm still waiting to hear back, and it's been 6 months. So we don't want to set that precedent, right? Because it shows that you really aren't sure about what your need is or what you want. And that lack of clarity also it turns candidates off. And whether we like to think of it this way or not, candidates are interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. And so this whole process of building the recruiting process and making sure that we're having candidate experience and candidate care at the forefront is super important. Renee, anything else you want to chime in on the process at all?
No, I think that's a great point about timing and follow up, but then also, yeah, having your interview team in alignment on what's important. And I do see that often where people want the person identified very quickly, but if you move too fast and you don't really build in all those components for the role, it could really, you know, it could really be a challenging outcome. And I think also just to the point that you made earlier around don't count yourself out if you're a small business. You can compete by based on what the culture is within your organization and how people are treated. It makes a difference.
Yeah. And you also have to think about what the profile of the person is, right? There are people out there who are built for working in small environments. They're nimble, they're flexible, they want to learn. Whereas there are people who are truly built for, a larger environment where sometimes it's a niche sort of thought process, right? You're here, you're going to do accounts payable. That's it. That's going to be your role from now until, forever. And that is something you want to interview for as well, right? Because not everyone's built for a smaller environment. There's no right or wrong. It's just where do people thrive and where is their heart when they're working every single day. And Sahima, absolutely correct in what you said. Candidate experience, it's a two-way street, always. And it's become more and more prevalent, right? As people go out there and they're talking about the experience they had with your firm. Glassdoor, even LinkedIn, people have so many more options for sharing their feedback and how things are going. So while it's not a thing to be scared of. It's more about thinking about what you want candidates to put out there when they're, going through this process with you. And, finding a job is hard. Finding a job you love is even harder. So, think about that and offer some grace as well to these folks who are putting themselves out there to want to come and work for you. So the elephant in the room, the cost of hiring versus cost of a bad hire. A typical cost of a hire is probably about a 15 to 30% of annual salary. Going beyond the numbers, it costs you time and effort. The job ads have a cost. And then onboarding has a cost, right? Because you're spending all this time training somebody and bringing them on board and also sharing all the knowledge from your company to what you have to offer. So, it's a lot of investment on your time. And when you think about bringing a bad hire, it costs like exponentially more. I mean, 30 to 50% is being conservative on an annual salary, right? Because let's say you bring somebody on board and they were not the right fit, and there were red flags on the interview process or whatever there might be that indicated this person wasn't the right fit. You've now spent 3 months paying this person, training this person. So not only have you lost out on that salary that you've paid this person for those 3 months, but you're also losing out on the time and the investment that your team is putting in or you're putting in. If you're an N of one, and that the weight of that time and investment is significantly more than, even if you did have a team that's kind of spreading that out. Now, let's say you've got some other folks in your organization and they're put, uh, pulling the slack for while this person is being trained. So employee burnout, turnover, these are all things that you have to think about when you're thinking about bringing the right person on board for your company. Um, so, let me segue a little bit about you thinking about offering or utilizing fractional HR and talent acquisition. So our purpose really is as fractional HR and talent acquisition consultants is we're part-time or on-demand expert support, right? You don't need to build a full HR department. Maybe you're a accounting firm of 10 people and you don't necessarily need somebody to be in-house at all times. However, as employee issues come up, as talent acquisition needs come up, do you want to take away from you spending time with your clients and getting their billable hours and spending that recruiting, or do you want to, have somebody to help support you through that? So what we essentially do is we're part-time or hourly support or, retained support for you to kind of handle any issues that might come up. We don't require a full-time salary, so there's no full-time salary or overhead for an HR or TA team. And they can help you scale with your business needs, right? So you're a small firm, but guess what? You're looking to expand and really get your mark out there. So maybe, you're looking to be acquired 2 years from now and you want to build out your team for that to happen. So we help scale with your business and really are essentially an extension of your team. And so I think, it depends on where you are in your journey and, what you're looking for, but it might make a lot of sense for you if, you're looking at that, um, the dividends of what it's costing you from taking you away from revenue work. And also, how long is it taking you to hire? How is that impacting the business? So these are some of the things that you need to think about when you're, considering fractional support. And then, maybe you have a really high impact first hire. Maybe it's a niche hire. Maybe this is going to be your right hand and be a operational support to you. So these roles are super critical for your business to be successful. So having somebody who does this day in and day out and this is their wheelhouse might make sense for you. And also maybe you've built up to about 30, 35 people, but you're having a lot of turnover. And, thinking about bringing somebody in to kind of help assess that and help you navigate how you hire, it can become super critical as well. So turnover is becoming costly for you. It might make sense to think about fractional support. Um, Renee, I know this is your wheelhouse as well. So if there's anything you want to pop in there about fractional support.
Yeah, I think that for small businesses, sometimes you're wearing so many hats. And so you're the business strategist, you're kind of thinking about this year's targets, next year's targets, but you want to make sure that whatever you're struggling with, that you're the first one to identify it and get some support there, wherever it is. It'll just have lasting impact to make sure, number one, that you don't get burned out, but you also that you get the results that you need longer term. So as Monica mentioned, it you have people that like myself and the rest of our team that have been doing it for a long time. And what my brand is really kind of centered around is making it simple. We've worked in highly strategic and hierarchical organizations, but what's the simple fix for a small business that gets you the impact the quickest way and not for bureaucracy's sake, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's just really what do you need and what's the team that you can leverage to get there the fastest.
And I just want to add, right? Recruiting is super important, but it's just the first step in a long process of managing your employees. So HR provides a lot more services, inclusive of thinking about onboarding, training, learning and development for your employees, employee issues, benefits, lots of things that come up as part of this. So, while I really enjoy the recruiting piece, it's the my favorite part. You get a job and you get a job, and it's lovely to be on that end. Um, the holistic approach is super, super important, and you want to maintain your culture and other things. So we can definitely be an asset for that.
Absolutely. One other ad just around this is that the clients that I've had the most impact have really been around what's the longer range, what are the longer goals that they have. So 2 years out, 3 years out, you know, do they want to really tap into a bilingual market? And so what's hiring look like so they can start now, or they see a need with their customers or clients and they want to pivot now based on where they see the trends going.
Yeah.
So it's really a great opportunity. We can be a thought partner on what that looks like. And also just one little plug, whatever business you're running, one people metric, and it probably should be turnover. Just want to throw that out there. At least one people metric. You can talk about profit, you can talk about revenue, but at least one people metric, and it should be turnover. Okay.
Great point. Great point. So just, to summarize, key takeaway, you don't need a large team to hire well. More importantly, what you do need is the right strategy, a clear structure, and really smart support, whether that be internally or externally. Um, if you can go to the next slide, Monica. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Renee, to kind of share a little bit more about what other services we offer as an HR team.
Thank you. So on this slide, there's the QR code if you'd like to book some time to learn more about our services. We do have a team that all specialize in different things. So the skill set is very varied, the industry experience as well, but everything from questions of, I'm not sure this leader should be my, you know, top go-to backup person. We can spend time with your leaders to do assessments. We have, of course, tools and surveys, things like that. So an unbiased way to kind of come in, get to know your team, and just use some of the resources that you will see in larger organizations, even in your small business, to get you some information that you can action on quickly. Of course, we've mentioned talent acquisition, but also I've created development for some associates, and really, how do you move people through from one job to the next and make sure their readiness is there. Um, Also, we've created just executive support. So there are some monthly programs where you're like, I don't think I need a big project that needs to be done right now, but I would like to have someone on speed dial, right? So I need a check-in maybe twice a month or once a month from an HR strategic standpoint. We've created that as well. There's executive coaching. We've created performance management tools. And I even have a director that specializes in professional branding or resume support and interview etiquette. So that is for, of course, individual contributors, but you may have a family member or someone that needs that level of support. There's someone on our team that specializes in that as well. All right. We'll go to the next slide. So this is our team of directors. And as I mentioned, I kind of grew up in the consumer packaged industry. So food and beverage was my start. And then from a corporate perspective, I transitioned to veterinary services after spending 20 years probably in food and beverage. But we have someone that specializes in aviation support. So a lot of different industries, nonprofit. Khadijah is nonprofit experience. Adriana is CPG as well. Miss Monica, who you see on the call, is actually our executive assistant. Thank you, Miss Monica, for helping out. And then Monica, her specialty, she's an executive coach as well as talent acquisition. So this is a little bit of the team. Just wanted to put a few faces with the names as well. And we thank you so much for your time. We do have a couple more webinars coming up. So next week, we'll talk about communication and how it connects with your team and various other topics that will be, so probably about once or twice a month, we'll be having free webinars for small businesses. So just want to put that out there as well. So please make sure that you follow if you found us on social media. And thank you so much for your time. I'll pause. Can we send out invite? Yeah, we definitely can. We can get you on the list for invites. Thank you for that, Joe. We'll definitely do that. And please, if you have questions, feel free. If you can put the questions in the chat, we'll open up. This is kind of the end of the presentation. Ms. Monica, you can click to the next slide. But please feel free. If you have questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can also come off mute, whatever you like. But we thank you all for joining. Oh, I do have one other question I'd love for you to put in the chat. What industry are you supporting? Would love to know what businesses are represented on the call. If you could put that in the chat, that would be great. And we also will send a summary, and I apologize, we had a couple issues with the link. So thank you all that pushed through and sent me a note to join. But yeah, if you'd like to share, okay, so we have some people from tech. Thank you. Okay, computer game space. Thank you, Marta. Autism therapy. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so we will send out a summary of just some highlights and tools. And then also you'll be on our distro for future webinars as well. Oh, construction. Okay, thank you for that, Joe. Awesome. Well, we look forward to working with you, and please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Everyone have a great day. Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot, diversity in industries. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.